reflected colonial influences and national architectural identities, reveals much about the diversity and plurality of post-colonial Africa. As has always been the case in Africa, contemporary architecture reveals the influence of a rich array of cultures. Colonial explorers and administrators brought European architectural forms to the coast and urban areas of Africa, a phenomenon that is echoed in both nationalist architecture and urban planning. The Portuguese, for example, brought medieval European fortress architecture to Africa, primarily along the western and southwestern coastal regions. Characteristic features of Portuguese colonial architecture, primarily manifested in coastal forts and castles, include high towers, thick masonry walls with gun turrets, large storage spaces and dungeons for slaves, and living quarters sited within defensive walls. Many of the European forts and castles in Africa are located along the coast of Ghana because of the large quantities of gold exported there. The influence of the British on coastal architecture in Africa was also significant.
In 1481, 10 years after the Portuguese first landed on the west coast of Africa, John II ordered an expedition to build a fortress at Elmina. It was given the name of São Jorge de Mina. Although constructed of stone, little of this structure, which was built in 1482, is visible in the present building. It had 2 stories and was built around a courtyard, had corner towers, alternately round and square on plan, and a great court extending towards the sea. In its first form, it lasted for about a century, but Renaissance fortifications developed in Italy during the 16th century were quickly adopted by other European princes and their engineers. Portugal was no exception, and the forts constructed on the African coast reflected the Italian treatises by such experienced engineers as Girolamo Cattaneo and Galasso Algisi. The African forts were modified to take account of the materials available and were less sophisticated than their European models.
São Jorge or Elmina Castle was largely reconstructed in the late 60th century, possibly on the advice of an Italian engineer, Filippo Tursi, who was engaged to modernize Portuguese fortification at home and abroad. The walls of the main block were thickened, the outer walls of the great court were strengthened, and the additional rectangular basins were built. The fort provided a pattern for the other that were built subsequently. The most important of these were the British Cape Coast Castle and the Danish Christiansborg, largely remodeled over the years and now the official residence of the Ghanaian head of state. By the end of the 18th century, over 30 forts, castles, and trading lodges had been built along the Gold Coast by 9 European nations or their charter companies. Fort Jesus on the East African coast was designed by an Italian engineer, Gio Battista Chiarato, who is described as chief architect of India in an inscription above the main gate. Gaspar Rodriguez was in charge of the work, which was completed in 1593. In plan, it consists of large rectangular courtyard surrounded by color stone curtain walls, 4 corner basins, and a rectangular projection with small angled towers on the seaward side. Like Elmina Castle incorporates a church in the courtyard, the Dutch had taken over the main European trade by the early 17th century, and they continued to construct forts along the West African coast. Aside from the Elmina Castle and Fort Jesus, there are other colonial African forts that has been built. There are Richer House, Dexcope Fort, Fort St. Jago, and the Castle Cape Town. North, West, and East Africa.
North, West, and East Africa. Portuguese expeditions to North Africa resulted in the acquisition of a number of coastal towns, including Tangier, Morocco, which was captured in 1471. Almost 200 years later, it became a British possession as part of the dowry of Charles II's queen, Catherine of Braganza, and its acquisition almost led to the appointment of Christopher Wren as its designer and supervisor of Tangier's new fortifications. But he refused the commission. When Sextus Hollar recorded these fortifications in 1667, but they were all destroyed when the city was abandoned in 1683. Ottoman incursions effectively ended European hopes of the conquest along the North African coast until the French arrived at the end of the 18th century. There was extensive construction of new buildings in Cairo, mostly in an Italian or Austrian classical style, but there was also a revival of interest in Arabic decoration which was used in the designs of private houses, for example, Villa de Lord and Villa Esmauris and Villa Zogeb, and apartment buildings. The Salamut of the Ghazrib Palace is richly ornamented with Arabic details, although it was constructed of cast iron in Germany. Other examples include an elaborate public fountain at the Bab el Hadid, the Cairibi Palace, the Museum of Arab Art, and Omar Sultan's Palace.
North, West, and East Africa structures. The Stone Palace Kumasi in 1822, S. Joseph Zanzibar in 1896-98, Church of Scotland Mission Church Bantayr 1895, French Mission Church Bagamoyo in 1910-14, S. Joseph Arsi Cathedral Dar es Salaam in 1892-1902, the House of Wonders Zanzibar in 1883, a coral stone-built house, now the Museum Lamu in 1892, the Voma Bagamoyo in 1895. Meanwhile, in South Africa,
After the castle had been completed on the Cape of Good Hope in 1679, a number of residences were built within the enclosure, including that of the governor of the Dutch East India Company, in which the Council of Chamber of 1695 still exists intact. Outside the castle walls, the company's garden was laid out as a series of parallelogram and included a garden house, which was later incorporated into Governor House, now Tone Ruins. The early houses were single-storied with wattle and dove walls and thatch roof, although some bricks were being made as early as 1694. Were established as farmers in the colony were simply cob-wall building with thatch roof, either gable or with half-hip end, and floors of the mud and cow dung in plan. They consisted of 3 rooms, and it was from these houses that the characteristic Cape Dutch homestead and they manor houses developed in the middle of the 18th century.
This may be grouped in 3 main categories. There are T-shape in plan and H-shape or combination of both H and T. The third category is the plan, which was used for grander house. In each case, an entrance ball led into an inner ball which served as dining room. Other rooms were grouped symmetrically on each side of the axis. A stope cave with Batavian tiles ran the full length of the facade and sometimes around the wool house to form a podium. Sometimes, pillars along the stope supported a trellised vine later is developed in the veranda. That was a common characteristic of the colonial architecture. The walls were constructed of undressed stones or sunburned bricks, rendered and lime-washed, and the roofs were covered with reed thatching. Teak was used for the sash windows and external joinery. The first public building erected in the colony was the Burger Watch House. The second and the present building is a two-storied structure with superimposed Doric and Ionic orders, Baroque ornament, and a projecting entrance porch or loggia. Originally, it was crowned with a balustrade. Other signs of growing prosperity followed. A hospital was built in 1772, and the construction of three-storied brick warehouses indicated an increase in trade. In 1779, the first Groot Kirk was enlarged on a Greek cross plan with a segmental pediment gable and pilasters. It was rebuilt around 1840. Only the tower now survives. The Groot Kirk contained a pulpit carved by Anton Anreth, who also produced one for the Lutheran Church, which he also refaced in a classical manner. This seems to have been the model for the Stichting, the South African Missionary Society's church.
Philip Maurice Dutton, born in England, arrived in Durban in 1877. Some of his works are Alexandra Hotel, Allington Hospital, and Pietermaritzburg town offices. Other architects are Kilt Chinkin, who designed Custom House in Durban. Alfred Singleton designed Boys Preparatory School, Girls Mother School, and a saloon. Siteswada, who designed government buildings, Arthur Lee Barracks, Statmall School, State Printing Works at Pretoria. Sir Herbert Baker was a British architect remembered as the dominant force in South African architecture for 2 decades and a major designer of some of the New Delhi's most notable government structures. He was born and died at the outlets in Cobham, Kent. Among the many churches, schools, and houses he designed in South Africa are the Union Building in Pretoria, St. John's College in Johannesburg, the Winburg Boy High School, Groot's Court in Cape Town, and the Champagne Homestead and Rhodes Cottage in Buchendal. He also designed the retreat in Welgelegen, Rosenburg, National Mutual Life Association, Kimberley Memorial, Rhodes Memorial, a house in Pretoria, and the Union Building at Pretoria. South African structures. Growth Estancia, Martin Mark House, Cape Town in 1782. Burger Watch House, Cape Town in 1755-61. The Castle, Cape Town. Lutheran Church, Cape Town. Sedigesting, Cape Town. The Castle, Cape Town. The Governor's Residence, Cat Balcony. Rosenburg, Cape Town. Groot Kirk, Cape Town, rebuilt in 1835-41. The Trustee Worsiters in 1823-5. Royal Observatory, Cape Town, in 1825-7. Parliament Building, Cape Town, in 1875-84. Cathedral, Grahamstown from End. Town Hall, now Post Office in Durban. City Hall in Durban. Town Hall, Pietermaritzburg, in 1891-3, reconstructed in 1898. Legislative Assembly, Pietermaritzburg, in 1887 to 89, additional in 1901. Town Hall, Port Elizabeth, in 1891, completed in 1894. Palace of Justice at Pretoria in 1896 to 1899. Roadsal at Pretoria in 1887 to 1890. Big House at Westminster in 1904 to 1905. Kimberley Memorial in 1904. Rhodes Memorial at Cape Town in 1905 to 1908. Union Building at Pretoria in 1910 to 1912. Union Buildings at Pretoria